But yeah, that's Krios.
I'm thoroughly impressed by that, bro.
Well, I have better video. I did some video that I might put up to show you. I'll throw a link to or whatever, so you can actually see it because it's the camera on this computer doesn't really give it justice, in my opinion. It really doesn't.
I mean, I wish that Private
I get to
Press
see it in
allowed
person tomorrow.
conversions.
Yes, you do, John.
I mean, I wish their Private Press allowed conversions in their tournaments. They have, I think it's a rule like 80% or 75% of the model has to be the original model.
Yeah.
Because cool conversions like that come out, and I'm like, man, I would love to play against that.
You know, one of the big problems with their line is the fact that it's much harder to convert, and that's one of the things that you know why people love Space Marines, because you know what, they can do whatever they want with them. People love Space Marines because I can have a Space Marine that's amazing and does whatever it wants and looks this way or that way or another way, and they have they have races like orcs. You're like, okay, orcs, I want to look more scrapyard, or I want to do this theme. I want to be snake bites, or whatever. And that's where GW has such an advantage, especially over things like War Machine, whose models are not up to par, or Infinity, whose
Well, if
models
the par is GW, then no one's up to par but GW.
Yeah, no, there's no company in the
Anyway,
world.
keep going.
There's a way to make it so that your
Well, the Private Press is now officially going over to sprues and John, what's the name?
Hard plastic injection molding.
Thank you.
Okay.
They're going over to that now. They even have kits on schedule to be released.
That's great, and I hope that the quality of plastic is better than their current quality of plastic, because I hate their current plastic.
It's a resin plastic mix, and yeah, it's not very good.
It's one of the worst products I've ever worked
You're talking
with.
about now or the upcoming one, John?
I'm
Right
talking
now.
Okay, the upcoming one is supposed to be all plastic.
Yep.
And from what I've, people that got their hands on it say it's pretty good.
Well, I hope so. And what I would really like to see is I don't know if I stated it correctly. One of the biggest advantages that Games Workshop has is that people love, because of the way that people love their fluff and the product that they have. They really can make it into a hobby, right? They can, and you look at Privateer Press does okay with it. Infinity paints their model, but none of these other games really say, hey, here's a hobby, right?
You're right. You're right. GW is a hobby, a full-on hobby.
Yes, and that's the advantage that they have, and that's the advantage that that if they want to succeed over having a decent game or even a game at all, they need to really keep.
I mean, but how far? I mean, what eventually is going to win out? I mean, if you're looking down the future, what wins out? The better rules or the better models?
The better rules do. The better models. The better models are. Well, I mean, frankly, what you're looking at.
Modeling's a dying hobby. It is a dying hobby.
Modeling is yes, it is dying. You're like looking out. Hey, there's this race, right? There's this race to have the best models, and GW is way far ahead. But the problem is that there is the end of times, and the end of times is everybody having a CAD-like program and a 3D printer that can produce the same quality that GW currently produces. And that's the end of times. That's when Games Workshop has either converted or died. And I, from my perspective, me personally, I think that if Games Workshop wants to continue to succeed, they do need to build a rule set around, a rule set that a vast majority, you can't always please everyone, but a vast majority not. And I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's at least a strong minority, at like 30% of the game doesn't like the game now,
I'd say I'd say you're at least 40%.
I don't know. I don't
know if you can really put hard percentages on it. I think it's more that everything that they've done since, I'd say, the release of 6th edition has served to divide the community into multiple sects. many small sects and divide it as far as possible. So I don't know that it's really hard percentages that like it or don't like it. It's many small sects that dislike this aspect or really like all of it or really dislike all of it or really dislike this aspect or that aspect. That'd be my opinion on that.
I think you're right, John. I think that yes, you're.
Okay, that's a better way to look at it.
Not knowing any real numbers, having not seen any supporting data, how do I really make that conjecture, right? And I think you're right. But I think that I think that there is this to be said. When you talk about 6th and 7th edition, you talk about how there's many experiences that these other games are getting bigger because people are being driven away from 40K that were, or I say 40K, Games Workshop, because Games Workshop is not as good. The rules are not as good as they were, and the rules before were really good, and people really enjoyed them before.
I say fifth, like we've already said, 5th edition was not a perfect system, but it pleased the majority of the crowd.
I think that a better majority than it does now, for sure. I mean, you could easily say that. A much larger majority.
Yeah.
John, by the way, the Dreadnought does look amazing, as everyone pointed out. It looks incredible. Man, I like Thomas on the stream. We gotta have Thomas on the stream more often.
Provides lots of good conversation, no?
Yeah, he does. I mean, a little conversation. I mean, we're now on prime time, so it's good we had this conversation again. We've already had it before, just me and John, but it's fun to have
more people's insight.
Yeah, Thomas is a competitive player like me. I'm a truly hyper-competitive player whenever I get into a game, and we have differing opinions being both that type of player, so it's always fun to get his perspective.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've enjoyed being on. I can't say that I would be around all the time, but I certainly do.
Every week, Thomas, or you will be burned in your sins.
I don't think that'll happen.
Probably not.
I'll keep hounding Thomas. He'll come on hopefully once every couple months at the least.
When I want Thomas to come on, I want to start hearing about his bat reps when he starts getting more into War Machine and how he starts breaking down the strategy. Because I guarantee he's gonna figure out something that nobody else has yet. I can already see it coming.
Well, yeah. I appreciate that thought, and I certainly hope that I will. But
being the type of players that we are going to figure something out. I know you will. You will discover something.
I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time with it. It's a fun game. I don't ever see it. I mean, I don't ever see it being my main passion. That's the problem.
You wait, Thomas, until one day he calls us up.
Nah, he'll play it.
Selling 10,000 points of Space
He'll play it because people are playing it. He'll play it because he has some fun with it. But he's never gonna, like you said, he's never gonna have a War Machine tattoo. He's never gonna have 10,000 points equivalent.
You never know what the future holds.
I know. I've known. I've always known.
Menoth's armies get traded in all the time.
Great. He's making a Space Marine Menoth, and they're gonna be pretty cool.
That conversion was probably one of my top 5. If that was on the market to play Menoth, I might have gone to Menoth.
Well, yeah,
that's how
Space Marnoths.
Space Marine model. So.
Well, you are playing. I mean, technically, Menoth are the Space Christians, which, I mean,
that's why he chose them because of the what's it called?
The one thing I can say about about War Machine is I like that each faction has a different feel to it. There's no. I mean, I want to say there's no recycled ideas because obviously there's recycled ideas, but each one has a different objective and feel to it of what it wants to do in its playstyle. Like Menoth is a shut you down. I'm good across the board. Shut you down your powers kind of feel to it, which is what you would get from Space Menoth. Like Trolls, they want to beat face you. They want to get in small skirmishes. They want to just try to overpower you. Pricks want to finesse you. They're very sneaky and they sneak behind you.
They want to debuff you. They want to.
Yeah.
They want to
Like,
kill your stuff to make new stuff of their own.
Scorn, they want their glass cannon in a sense. They want to run really fast at you, they want to stick their horns in you, and they want to throw you to the ground and beat face you while you're on the ground. And so I like that in War Machine, each faction has its own goal to accomplish in the game.
Are you trying to say that you feel that doesn't exist in 40K?
To an extent, yes. At least not as much as War Machine.
I haven't played War Machine games to tell that that's true or not, but I definitely... Hold on a second.
If you're gonna make any sort of argument, I have to tell you and inform you ahead of time that your argument is very much uphill when half the codices are some variety of Space Marines.
Thomas walked away. He didn't hear that.
I know.
No, I did hear it.
Okay.
I don't know how much longer I can be on the kid.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap this up here in the next couple minutes, so say your last thoughts and we're going to wrap up here.
Let me say this. You look at the way the Space Marines are. Hey. You have that argument with the Space Marines. Hold on a second, guys.
Sure.
Poor Dalian.
In the meantime, I will be getting some bat reps in this week against some good players here. I got a couple list dropped for the Crucible qualifier and stuff. So I'm getting I'll have some stories to tell you guys about how I'm getting wrecked.
Yeah, how badly you lose the Crucible.
Well, the Crucible's not till February, but I think because there's only 32 players in the Iron Gauntlet, 1 out of 32 isn't the worst chance to win it. Coming in with a non-base faction that has a good matchup against one of the top tier factions, maybe 2 if you argue Legion is one of the top. I was saying Signar, and I have a counter to Crix coming. So I mean, if I get the right matchups, it's very feasible that I could be in top tables.
Sounds very 40K. If I bring the super skew list and get the right matchups, I'll win.
I mean, this game is all about, your opponents, right? I mean, if I get matched up with the guy that wins the tournament in the end, hey, congrats.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get outplayed, I get outplayed. I think that's an element, though. I think in War Machine you have more of an element of outplay.
I can't keep
Certainly,
the span
full set. I agree with you. I agree that 40K has a problem. That it's more likely to be list-based, dice-based, or pocketbook-based than it is to be you're actually legitimately outplaying your opponent.
Right? I mean, like, when I'm in the game, I'm trying to accomplish a goal within my army to beat you.
That's a problem. That's a problem with the current game. That's,
I mean, John and me, we talk all the time, like off stream, about different strategies and stuff. We were talking right before we got on stream about how a certain list of mine would fare against like Butcher 3, and he was teaching me things like I was going. I was like, oh wow, I hadn't even considered it that way. So now I had to reconstruct this whole tactic of how I'm going to beat Butcher 3 and what list to use.
That still exists in 40K.
I don't think it's prevalent though.
I think that one of the advantages that War Machine has is that because they've made themselves character-centric, you can have many different lists within, many different lists and ideas within a faction, right? One more caster and your game goes differently, and your ideas and strategy is different than
completely different, like completely.
Yes, and that's a big advantage that War Machine has, and that's great. That being said, my counterpoint to John about whether or not 40K or whether or not there's as much variety and difference between the different packs or the different factions and groups in fluff, you see a real difference. In the current rule set, you certainly don't. I think
that's what I'm talking about, the rule set.
Okay, sure. They could, if they wanted to make it, if Games Workshop wanted to do it, they wanted to have a different feel for their armies, they could.
They should.
From the standpoint of being a player and doing.
Even a casual gamer can agree. Like, it'd be fun. Like, when you play orcs, you don't picture mech orcs. You picture green tide, like these mounds of boys running over you.
Well, they have. You can play all those different things. One of the things that they've allowed you to do is play more stuff. I just think that the strategies aren't. It's not as viable as the type of game that War Machine is right now. That's just the truth. And and people make that argument all the time on the internet. They say, people are like, that's so stupid that that's that way or that's this way or whatever. And people counter with, well, I'm sorry that's your feeling. Why don't you go play War Machine, right? If you want better rule set, go play War Machine. And there's, and from my perspective, I have a problem with that, sure. But you can, you could definitely make the argument that with a few changes, they could do a very similar thing.
They could have a very balanced game. GW is not like leaps and bounds. It's not like they're retards typing on a computer. They could very easily fix their game. 100% agree with you on that. I just think they haven't, though. And that's the thing, is like Eldar, to me, I picture like these slippery movement type things, which they've incorporated, great, but like then they're overpowered in every other facet as well. Like their movement should be really strong, and that there should be ties into your movement.
I don't think they're overpowered in other facets. I mean, sure, with the right psychic powers, you can make a 2+3 rollable save on them, but the 2+ rerollables always had in mind that you're allied with Dark Eldar, and if you're not allied with Dark Eldar, you never get that 2+ rerollable. And you don't have close combat ability. Regular Eldar, I mean, sure, you can bring an Autarch. The Autarch can have a cool sword. Sure, there are certain ones, some of the Phoenix Lords who are really strong, really powerful in close combat, but the Phoenix Lords don't really have a way to get an invulnerable save other than being in the same, having one cast on them again with psychic powers.
But that's kind of like the direction I wanted to go. Is I wanted them to start skewing the armies to accomplish goals, to have feels to them. You know what I mean?
But they do. They do have feels to them. You can bring an army that, Eldar is definitely different than Space Marines, right? Dark Eldar and Eldar play differently from each other. Regular Space Marine Codex.
Not in your win conditions, though.
The Blood Angel Codex.
Not in your win conditions. They may have different rule sets, but when you're trying to win the game, they all do the same thing.
Okay, well that has nothing to do necessarily with the codexes. That's more with the ways you win the game.
No,
right.
you can have different win conditions within each book by creating different rule sets for them and making it, so one is more objective based than the other.
You're saying win conditions, and what you want to do, what you're trying to say is different ways in which you unlock the army's potential, thus giving you victory. Because
okay,
as far
as
I tell, War Machine, when you play a game of War Machine, you really have two ways to win. You win the scenario, or you kill their caster. Every game I've played so far, we won by scenario. I've only played it, and John tells me, okay, yeah, remember, you've only played against Khador, and you're only playing Minoff, right? So there's definitely different groups, like you're saying, that go about it in a different way. But, again, that goes back to, there's only two ways to win a game of War Machine. And how you get there is one thing, but victory is still only through two ways. And you can argue the same thing about 40K, or at least they were trying to make the same thing out of 40K.
Is the objectives of 40K even relevant?
Well, yeah, the objectives they're completely relevant.
Are they relevant before the 5th and 6th turn?
That's what I mean.
It depends on the tournament that you go to, or it depends on who you're playing with.
Okay.
Well,
you're dancing around that question pretty good.
No.
Not
many people play tournament scenarios when they're not in the actual tournament.
Yeah, don't dance around. Do they matter?
War missions. You use the Eternal War missions out of the 40K rulebook. Then it's variable. There's at least what, 1, 2, 3. There's three out of 6 missions that objectives are not important unless they're only important to hold at the end of the game. 3 out of 6 of the Eternal War missions.
So 50% of the game, I'm just trying to table my opponent, pretty much.
25%, because there are also 6 there's 6 of the progressive missions, the ones where every objective could matter every turn. I don't think that the way that they've got the rules set up for that scenario, for those scenarios, I can't remember what they're called right now. I don't think.
War?
What?
Are you talking about Maelstrom of War?
Maelstrom of War. It's not balanced. It's
not
not
even close. We weren't talking about that though.
It's a mess, but it
is technically in the book, so
it's technically in the book and it's technically objectives. If you play with Maelstrom of War mission, the objectives could matter every turn.
Unless I table my opponent.
Yeah, but in the Maelstrom of War, you more often see people just moving around trying to get their objective points than bothering to... It's like, well, I could shoot at your guys, but I could go get that objective for a point, so why would I do that?
Exactly. It's extremely card dependent. It's not a balanced set, but it does make objectives useful the whole time.
What about in the Eternal War missions, though?
Eternal War missions, in my opinion, 50% of the time, 50% of the missions are they're objective based, and they matter. It matters at the end of the game.
At the end of the game or during the game?
It matters at the end of the game who holds them, right? 50% of the time. That being said, you can still table your opponent, right?
Yes.
I almost never see I don't think I've tabled an opponent in years. I mean,
years. Wait, you guys stop the game before somebody gets tabled because you realize, like, I'm gonna shoot you off the table? Like, you may not have tabled somebody, but if you stop the game early because you just know your next turn, like, you're going to blow them off the table.
I think he had to step away for a second.
Yes, he did. In the meantime, a word from our sponsors, GW.
That's what he does when he's frustrated with the tablet. Anyway, I would like to keep, but I got a 2.5-year-old. I thank you so much for letting me be on the show, and I want to come on again and keep talking. And I could keep chatting with you guys for hours. It's a blast.
We know we did. This is our longest show to date, man. 2 hours 21 minutes.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in trouble. So
we all are gonna be in trouble.
I hope that everyone's enjoyed it. I hope that I didn't say anything that offended anyone too much.
It's okay. I make Zelios mad every week.
I will see you guys in the future on a future one. I promise I'll come back.
Love you, Thomas. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, man.
We're gonna probably just wrap the whole show up right now, I would say. So.
Yeah, 2 hours is a good time.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
That's the nice rolls.
For the long game, long show here, and hopefully we can get Thomas back in the next couple months or so, at the latest, to have another awesome show like this. So, thanks everyone, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.